we're in the midst of a massive workplace disruption. There are still groups within organizations that can't be hybrid. And sometimes I feel like people forget about those groups. Yes, place design matters. Yes, improvements in the place design, but also it doesn't need to be this massive, complicated thing. Sometimes small things also really matter and count to people. I think that it's less about hybrid, not hybrid. Are you in every day? Are you not? It's more about supporting people in what they do and giving people agency.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Heroes of Hybrid Work. On today's pod, I'm very excited to welcome Katie Finlayson, Head of Workplace Strategy at MillerKnoll, a collective of dynamic furniture brands representing over 100 years of design research, which they leverage to reshape the experience of work and to design a more sustainable world that improves people's lives. Katie is passionate about helping customers solve problems to create an amazing experience for employees while meeting business drivers. Music to my ears. Katie has had an awesome career, moving from project management and design to facilities operations to workplace strategy, which gives them a unique perspective on the future of the workplace and why Katie is joining us as a hero of hybrid work today. Katie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So let's jump in. Could you tell us a little bit about your background and your story?
Sure, you caught a lot of it. So I have been with MillerKnoll for about 6 years. I head up our workplace strategy group. It's a global group of strategists. We work very closely hand in hand with a workplace design team. And instead of internal workplace strategy, we are actually external. So we are client facing, and we're really here to work through whatever problems our clients may have, help them kind of solve for those problems, roadmap how to move forward. So when they do get to a furniture order, we're a furniture company, they feel really good about what they're ordering and they're ordering the right things. Prior to that, I was a project manager for a tenant rep brokerage called Cressa. And prior to that, a facilities manager. And I've actually been a customer of MillerKnoll in years past. So I also really understand what it feels like to be in that customer seat, making decisions, spending money. It's stressful. And so we're really here to support our clients get it right.
I really think that's super interesting that you work with them on a strategy to make their office design the best that it can be for their employees. And then you provide them with the furniture to make it happen. I think it's kind of brilliant, to be honest. I love it.
That's lovely. That's what we're here to do.
Awesome. So as you know, and as you've spoken about many times, our relationship with work and the workplace has changed forever. When you talk about this, what do you mean?
Agreed. It has changed forever. And I think that we are still in the midst of figuring out what it means. And we have lived through not only a pandemic, but as a result of that pandemic in terms of work, we're in the midst of a massive workplace disruption. And I think we're all what's kind of interesting, it's stressful for some people, but it's also kind of interesting because we're all kind of in it trying to figure it out together. And there isn't a magic bullet. I think that for my group and me and MillerKnoll, what we have kind of come to is that it's really about purpose. It's about making sure that flexibility exists. I think that's one thing we've learned. Flexibility is important to people, and that work can be done in different places, but that it has to be purposeful. You can't, what you're doing at home on a Tuesday shouldn't be done on a Wednesday in the office. We're just in a desk all day. Make good use of the variety of spaces that you have options to: office, home, Starbucks, whatever that might be, and be purposeful so you can really leverage that space to do the best work. That's really what we feel is the best thing moving forward.
Yeah, so that makes a ton of sense. We talk a lot about intentionality on this show and being purposeful. I hear that you can bring this to life for us through a success story. You say you have a client that instead of trying to go back to pre-COVID norms, they embraced the changes and created a new protocol and space design to support this. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think the real use cases here are super helpful to our listeners.
love this story, and I want to give a little bit of context that initially coming out of COVID, most of our clients wanted to go back to pre-COVID, utilization, and it was generally batch swipes, which is not the best way necessarily to measure. People are coming in, but you don't know what they're doing and you don't know how long they're there. So they were measuring success based off of pre-COVID utilization, and that they were, we're only 20% of pre-COVID utilization. And my argument would always be, why is pre-COVID utilization the benchmark? Maybe there was too much density. And so that is something that I saw a lot of organizations kind of wrestle with. Is, do we embrace this kind of new thing, or do we try to go back to what we were because that's what we knew and that's what was comfortable and we thought it worked? As a facilities manager, I stacked people in that building, and so that was not necessarily the best workplace experience. So number one, back it up by just saying I always challenge everyone to say, maybe what we're learning and some of this disruption through COVID should be embraced. And what I'm finding now is many organizations have now embraced it. They're struggling a little less, and they're talking about purpose. This one organization was, it was in the pharma industry, and they were largely pre-COVID. They had a lab space within their offices, and they were all kind of in this office together, the lab folks, the support people, and they were an in-person environment. Not a ton of flexibility and a lot of hiring in the general physical vicinity of the office. Through COVID, they changed their hiring practices, and everybody went home, and they realized that they could hire globally, and their workforce really, really changed. And when they came out of COVID, what they realized was, okay, we've got this new workforce. We're very distributed now. It's a highly varied, talented workforce because we could tap into all kinds of different people all over the world, but we don't see each other, and that's a problem. And so what they did is that they ended up kind of stacking floors. So they put departments that were traditionally on separate floors. Now they were not as many people in the office. So they put people together. So that was number one, really important. Instead of having a floor have fewer people on it, but all the furniture, and it feels like a ghost town, they were creating that hustle and bustle by putting people together. But by doing that, instead of saying, well, we have too much real estate, let's try to sublease 3 floors, they used an entire floor as an event space. And what they had been doing is they realized that having this highly distributed team, they still needed to meet, and they probably needed to meet monthly or quarterly. And they had been using like hotel ballrooms, and the experience was bad, the sound was bad, the food was, everything was bad. And on top of it, because they hired so many new people that had never been in the office, there was no cultural aspect that they were sharing with those remote employees. So they wanted the employees, when they came, to really feel that culture. So we helped them, number one, my team figured out who are the teams that are going to be having these meetings, and what are they? How long do they last? What are you going to be doing in the meetings? Are you having breakout sessions? So we could really get down to what types of furnitures and settings you need. And then we worked with one of our workplace designers, and they redesigned this floor. And we did it as an event space to support these team meetings fundamentally. But then also, when it isn't being used, yoga spaces, happy hours, just ways to bring people together where they're not together every day, but they even recognize, as a distributed organization, we need to find purpose together. And if we have these very strong connection points that are purposeful, then we can leave and go do our work, and we're kind of satiated, and we have our marching orders, and that they need to do that regularly. So it was a success story. And we loved being involved with that, helping them kind of solve for that.
Love that. I love that. So instead of being dispersed across multiple floors, you put them onto one floor, right?
Yep.
And then, so office utilization was now high, I imagine, because you filled it, right? And I love the hustle and bustle that you were talking about. I think that a lot of organizations could use that advice and say, well, just make the space smaller because not everyone's coming in every day, right?
Exactly.
And how do you do this? So hybrid policies have accelerated lower office utilization. What would you say to that?
To me, it's less about, yes, that is true. So let me back up. Hybrid policies have created fewer people in the office on a 5-day-a-week basis. Yes, organizations may need less real estate moving forward because of these policies. That makes sense. the spaces, regardless of the level of utilization, need to be purposeful and need to be improved upon.
Okay.
People need to feel compelled to come in. And yes, you can mandate it, but at the same time, that's not going to engage an employee. That might get them there, but that's not necessarily going to engage them. And the reality is that if you're paying an employee to do a job, you want an engaged employee because they're doing their best work and they are highly productive, which then leads to an organization that is productive and successful. So I think that we have seen less square footage, but we have seen more investment in spaces and higher quality spaces. So in a way, there is less footage, but the spaces are so much better. And organizations are really now, they're embracing an experience and that they want to support their people through an experience in a way that pre-COVID, those discussions, they were happening, but not to the degree that we see them now.
Yeah, and do you have any examples of the impact that these newly designed spaces have on employees' well-being or their engagement? Any anecdotes or data behind it?
I think that well-being is a little bit difficult to measure from a data standpoint.
Sure.
We definitely feel at MillerKnoll, that it really does come down to get it right. It comes down to kind of three things: well-being being one of them, connection being one of them, and kind of planning for change being one of them. So what we find is that it's that like three-legged stool, and when you don't have one, it doesn't quite work. So the spaces, it's not as much about having beautiful furniture. Like, yes, it is. And it's, of course, you want a nice, beautiful aesthetic space. You want a nice break room. But what you want to do is design the space to support those buckets. So yes. So for well-being, for instance, have respite spaces, have spaces where people can go take a break, have different types of workspaces. People work differently. People need different levels of focus, things around them to focus. Support people in that way, and that improves their well-being because they get what they need. They get the spaces. I think the thing that we learned during COVID is that we can all work pretty much anywhere, but we're very good at creating workarounds. But that isn't necessarily the best way to do your work, is to have to figure out workarounds. So if you really solve and understand that it's kind of designing, it's not designing for one group, it's kind of designing, it's inclusive. It's designing for everyone by offering different types of spaces to support different needs, different work styles. And through that, you get an increased level of well-being because people just feel supported.
I personally feel better just looking at your background. So you all are doing a good job over there at MillerKnoll, because I'm going to call you after this so that you can redesign my space so I feel as happy looking at your background.
We do say design for the better of humankind. So there you go.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. The colors, everything.
I appreciate that.
Awesome. So just as a follow-up here, we talk a lot about neighborhoods on this podcast, and I know you're all a pro at these. So you talked about some spaces for community spaces, maybe some respite, as you said. What are the other different types of neighborhoods or spaces you find are most impactful?
So we're seeing neighborhood design a lot, and we are definitely kind of championing neighborhood design. It's less about the type of neighborhood, and it's more about the group that it's supporting. So my team will often come in and focus group different departments and kind of understand, how do you work? What do you do every day? What types of spaces and tools do you need to do that work? Are you currently provided with those spaces or not? And our designers will design those neighborhoods based on some of often they're nuances, but they're really important nuances for how that team works. And they'll design a neighborhood specific to that work style and the type of work they do. So a creative department is going to have a slightly different setup than an engineering department. We often, will then provide furnishings where it's this kind of kit of parts. So you're not buying separate things for every department in every neighborhood. You're operating off of the same core product solutions configured in different ways to support those people. So it's the different neighborhoods in our world, at least, are linked to who's in the neighborhood. and what are they doing? And that's what determines some of the differences in the neighborhoods. A creative department might have more lounge space. They might have more open space. They might have different types of brainstorming space versus other departments. HR might need more closed spaces, those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where we start getting into, that's where the differences occur, if that makes sense.
So let's talk about return to office. I know you have a national and a global team. What are some regional trends you've noticed with a return to office or even global trends?
So it's really fascinating. I have a global team, and so I'm lucky enough to be able to pick everybody's brain. And it was interesting because we see some shifts. So during COVID, what was fascinating globally is that the wanting to be home and wanting flexibility, that was seen in countries and regions that had never happened before. Japan, a resistance to going in. I mean, that's a cultural shift. What we're finding kind of post COVID is, yes, there are some differences. Asia, much more back, but still a level of flexibility that hasn't completely gone away really anywhere. So Asia, they're back more. Europe, they're back more. Canada, a little bit back more. So not quite as much, but ahead of the United States.
Sure.
Latin America, similarly. The United States is where we start seeing some of these. We're a little bit behind, and it is by pockets. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. The South has been back, but it's warm here. It was easier. We could be outside more. We find that large urban centers, it's not quite there yet. And that might be, I don't think anyone's put the finger on why. There's a lot of ideas as to why commute's a biggie, and
totally.
so commute, I think that quality of spaces, we're even seeing in some of these large urban centers, the pendulum is slowly shifting, but the one consistent thing is that hybrid or some type of flexible policy, that's what we call it. It's less about hybrid, it's more about having flexibility to kind of manage where and how you do your work and when.
Mm-hmm.
But that's by far the consistent piece.
Okay.
Even in the countries that are back, there's a level of flexibility. Maybe they're home one day a week that did not exist pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So I do think that is something lasting that is going to stay with us. And it's a good thing.
Yeah. We say a lot that the hybrid work debate is over. Like there's just flexibility. We now know that we can do, a lot more different kinds of work at home, as you said, than we do in the office. And it makes a lot of sense for productivity reasons to do so. But when you say that we're back, you don't necessarily mean 5 days a week, right?
No.
And that's what we're talking.
And I think, no, I do not. Although, sure, there are probably some organizations and regions where, people are back 5 days a week. I think some of it is culturally. I think some of it is what they do. What we have found is the vast majority at a global scale have a level of flexibility. What that looks like might be a little bit different by region, by country. But that is a consistent thing that we do see regardless of where we're looking.
Okay.
And I agree. I think that that's a good thing. The other thing I think that sometimes is forgotten about that we speak to our clients all the time about is that there are still groups within organizations that can't be hybrid.
Sure.
And sometimes I feel like people forget about those groups.
We do. We always do. Yes.
And so I often, in my team, we speak with our clients that have those populations, like pharma, they have lab-based,
Sure.
The military, they have people that for security reasons could not go home. And we have a lot of different types of clients, but for those organizations, it's about creating an equitable experience between the groups of people that have the flexibility and can be home, that's a plus, and the groups of people that cannot. If you can't offer them the same thing, you have to offer them an improvement to their workplace experience and learn about what maybe doesn't work for them in the current space or the current strategy and improve upon those things so everyone has improvements to their work world, not just one group that gets to go home 2 or 3 days a week.
I love that. So for the folks that have to be in every day, how can you improve that equitability? Have you seen good examples of that?
Yes, I think that a lot of times improving space matters, and so if they have to be in every day, do they have access to natural light? Do they have the right types of desks? Do they have a good chair?
Yeah.
Some of the basics. Are you taking care of their ergonomic, their bodies in terms of the physical well-being if they have to be in every day?
Hmm.
Are you giving their brains what they need? Natural light? Do you have respite spaces? Because they do have to be there every day. And some of the functions are high pressure functions. You might need a break.
Hmm.
Do you provide those? And are they pleasant spaces to be in, or are they just a little dark closet down the hall?
Right. Right.
So we've seen a lot of that is really more specific to actually the built environment. And if they can make those adjustments in the built environment, and some of it also is amenities, like, maybe improves the food. Is there food in a vending machine? What is the food? Could
Food's
they
important.
improve that?
Food's important.
Not everyone needs a big fancy cafe. It can
Right.
literally come down to some basics like better food in the vending machine.
Yeah.
Sometimes small things really make a big difference to people when they
Yeah.
are the ones that have to, they're hungry at 2:30, they can't leave.
Yeah.
They need something to eat. So
Yeah.
it's those types of small things in the built environment and then also in kind of amenities that I think make a big difference.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say getting back to the basics because it's so true. We have a space we go in twice a week downtown Boston, and if it didn't have that bubbly like bevy
Right.
beverage thing with the sparkling water, I would be upset. It's
Coffee
yeah,
and sparkling water. Right.
yeah. It's like as long as you have sparkling water wherever I go, I will go. I
You're
will go
fine.
to the office.
And I tell a lot of my clients, I think that because I have this facilities management and project management experience, and I've seen so many strategies operate in spaces, I've kind of learned like, yes, place design matters. Yes, improvements in the place design, but also it doesn't need to be this massive, complicated thing. Sometimes small things also really matter and count
Yeah,
to people.
yeah.
So
What do you think? Because we do have a lot of facilities managers who do listen in. What do you think was your biggest lesson learned as a facilities operator? Because I think that that's actually very unique background for who we usually have on the show.
I had a unique, well, maybe it wasn't unique. I was very responsible to projects. So to launching projects, building them out, getting people in. And I learned a lot of lessons with a lack of change management. And it was a long time ago. I was much earlier in my career. I was kind of figuring it out as I went. I think this was before change management was really a big thing.
Sure.
And I made a lot of mistakes. And because I lacked any understanding of the change piece. And I think that even though facilities managers, like, yes, their day to day is not change management, but they are making decisions that impact people. And sometimes that impact can be positive or negative, whatever that might be, but you need to bring those people along with you. So maybe it's not the facilities manager that's doing the change management, but I think that as a facilities manager, you need to be aware of that need.
Sure.
And if it's not being done, spearhead who in this company can help me in this. And if there isn't anyone, could we get someone from outside to help?
Yeah.
And then allow that change person who's running that program run alongside the FM and the project, because they need to be happening at the same time so that people can be kind of brought along the way.
I love that.
That's the
That's a
biggest
great.
thing that I've learned.
I think that's a great insight. And now, as you said at Miller-Knoll, you have a plan for future change as one of those pillars, right? Belonging,
It is true.
connectivity. Right? I think I remember that from the beginning.
Yes,
So
yes, wellness,
wellness,
connectivity,
connectivity, plan
and
for
change.
change.
Yep,
There you go.
those
So
are the
now,
three biggies.
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So something I like to ask at the tail end of every interview is, what did I miss? You probably came here wanting to say something. Maybe I didn't ask the right question to get it out of you. Anything you want to leave people with in summary?
You asked all the right questions, by the way, but I think that it's less about hybrid, not hybrid. Are you in every day? Are you not? It's more about supporting people in what they do and giving people agency. And so even if you're in every day, you can still have agency within those boundaries. Everyone has work boundaries, but it's within the boundaries, allowing people to have some agency and allowing people to get their work done how they need to get it done. I think that there needs to be a big shift in work being measured by time input versus quality and deliverable of the work. And that we've had a disruption in where people work. We haven't had a disruption. It's slowly happening in how people are measured.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really important, is that largely, we have to embrace people do work differently,
Mhm.
and people process information differently. They focus differently. And we have to give people the space and the tools to be able to, and the agency to be able to do that. And if we allow that, you're going to get the best work out of somebody.
Yeah.
And they're going to be happy, and they're going to feel supported. And so I think that that is the biggest shift that I would hope to see in the next few years, along with space changes and schedule changes, is this kind of adjustment in how people are measured, and less management by presenteeism and more about, are you delivering quality work, and how you get it done is kind of your business.
Yeah.
So
No,
that's
I love that. Agency within some kind of structure. I think we all need the structures to free our creativity and get our best work done. So I couldn't have said it better. So Katie, how can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. And so that's probably the best way to find me. And I have a long, complicated last name, so Finlayson. But that's probably the best way
Ooh,
to find
say
me.
it
If
right.
anyone is curious, has questions, I'm happy to talk to anybody. I live and breathe this stuff all day long, and I'm very curious human being. And I still ask questions, why is this happening? Why is that happening? And so I love being able to kind of talk to other people that are also asking the same types of questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a
You're
huge
very
pleasure
welcome.
meeting you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.